Hello and welcome to the news update on Papyrus Global TV. I am Christiana Babayo. Kaduna governor declares Rijana epicenter of insecurity after mass abduction. Atiku Abubakar blames federal inaction for banditry surge, demands accountability. High Court strikes out 6 motions in lawyer Giwa's forgery impersonation case. Adamawa State allocates 8 billion naira for poverty alleviation in largest subnational commitment. Former Bauchi gubernatorial candidate urges creation of additional emirates and districts. Petroleum marketers demand definite timeline for government refinery revival. Federal government warns uncontrolled urbanization, population growth are pushing up construction costs. And now the news info. The governor of Kaduna State, Sani, has publicly designated the Rijana settlement along the Abuja-Kaduna Expressway as an epicenter of insecurity in Nigeria, citing a surge in violent attacks and mass kidnappings in the area. This declaration was made during a visit to Kaduna following a major abduction incident on January 18, 2026. The escalation of criminal activity in Rijana and neighboring communities has intensified after suspected bandits abducted dozens of worshippers from multiple churches in the Kajuru local government area. Initial reports placed the number of hostages at 177, all taken during services, although state security forces and government authorities initially provided conflicting accounts. Governor Sani identified Rijana's strategic location along a major transport corridor as a factor in its attraction to criminal elements and called for enhanced security deployment, including the establishment of a permanent military facility in Kurmin Wali to prevent further attacks. This pronouncement follows long-standing concerns about banditry and highway insecurity in northern Nigeria, where armed groups frequently target travelers and remote communities for ransom and violence. Kaduna State officials are coordinating with federal security agencies to secure the safe release of abducted victims and intensify operations against the criminal networks responsible. Former Vice President Atiku Abubakar has sharply criticized the federal government's handling of the country's deepening insecurity, describing recent bandit attacks as evidence of growing criminal audacity and urging that President Bola Tinubu's administration be held accountable for its security commitments. The comments were issued on January 21, 2026, following renewed attacks in parts of Kaduna State. Atiku highlighted that despite ongoing peace initiatives in several states, violent incidents, including large-scale kidnappings, continue unabated, signaling what he describes as ineffective security strategies. He urged authorities to not defer responses until after such attacks occur, arguing that deterrence and proactive action are crucial to curbing the menace. The former vice president also called for concrete results rather than public condemnations, asserting that Nigerians are disillusioned by repeated rhetoric without measurable improvements in safety. He argued that national leadership must demonstrate real progress against organized criminal networks rather than relying on peace agreements that he claims disproportionately benefit the perpetrators. The Federal Capital Territory FCT High Court sitting in Abuja has struck out 6 applications filed by Abuja-based lawyer Victor Giwa in his ongoing trial on allegations of forgery and impersonation. The judicial action took place on Wednesday, January 21st, as the court reaffirmed its authority to proceed with the matter. Victor Giwa and a co-defendant Ibitade Bukola are standing trial on charges that include forging official documents and impersonating another legal practitioner. The prosecution, led by Inspector General of Police, accused the defendants of attempting to misuse forged paperwork in a bid to influence legal proceedings. Giwa had filed multiple motions, including an application requesting that the presiding judge be recused from the case on the basis of alleged bias. Alongside other procedural challenges aimed at stalling the proceedings, Justice Jude Onwebuze reviewed the filings and determined that the motions lacked the legal foundation necessary for consideration, resulting in their dismissal. Legal observers note that the actions taken by the court reflect ongoing tensions in high-profile criminal cases where procedural maneuvering by defendants intersect with judicial demand for timely prosecution. The Adamawa State government has earmarked 8 billion naira in its 2026 budget for targeted poverty alleviation programs, marking one of the most significant state-level finance commitments to social welfare and economic inclusion in Nigeria. This budgetary provision was disclosed on Thursday, January 22nd, under the administration of Governor Amadu Umaru Fintiri. The allocation represents a dedicated effort to strengthen social safety nets and address chronic deprivation that persists across the northeastern region. Adamawa State, like many parts of of northern Nigeria continues to contend with high multidimensional poverty levels, affecting education, healthcare access, and livelihoods. State officials positioned the 8 billion naira outlay as part of broader fiscal priorities that also include infrastructure, education, and human capital development. The poverty alleviation funds are expected to support programs such as direct income support, skills training, micro enterprise development, and community level interventions aimed at vulnerable populations, particularly women and youth. Analysts say that such state level investments are notable in the context of Nigeria's federal system, where subnational governments have varied capacities to fund social programs. Adamawa's commitment could serve as a model for comparable initiatives in states with similar socio-economic challenges. We will now go on a short break, and when we come back, the news will continue. Stay tuned.
The Papyrus Global, we don't just cover events, we create cinematic experiences. From red carpets to birthdays, gala dinners, and your fairy tale weddings, we bring your moments to life with high-tech precision. Our gadgets are smarter, our lenses sharper, and our team simply world-class. Trust the Papyrus Global to tell your story in the boldest, brightest way possible.
Welcome back, and now the news will continue. A one-time governorship candidate in Bauchi State, Alhaji Umar Musa Gwaskaram, has called on the state government and legislature to expand the number of emirates and administrative districts across the state as part of efforts to improve grassroots governance and equity. The appeal was made during a media briefing in Bauchi City on January 21st, 2026. Gwaskaram, who contested under the Africa Liberation Party, described recent administrative reforms as positive, but insufficient, arguing that some communities remain marginalized and lack access to traditional leadership structures that could support local development and cultural representation. He specifically highlighted calls for establishment of new emirates in Zaki and Sakwa, Itas and Gadao, and Shira and Disina areas. The former candidate linked these demands to long-standing historical identities of local kingdoms predating colonial administration, asserting that reconstituting traditional authorities could bridge governance gaps and foster socio-economic progress in outlying regions. Gwaskaram also urged lawmakers to consider creating additional district and ward heads to strengthen the presence of traditional authority at the grassroots level. Owners of petroleum retail outlets under the Petroleum Products Retail Outlets Owners Association of Nigeria, Petron, have formally demanded a clear and actionable timeline from the federal government and the Nigerian National Petroleum Company Limited (NNPCL) for the revival of the nation's dormant government refineries. The demand was issued in Abuja on January 21st amid frustration over repeated delays in bringing the facilities back online. Petron officials said marketers and consumers alike need to understand when the Port Harcourt, Warri, and Kaduna refineries, which collectively have a combined design capacity of approximately 445,000 barrels per day, will begin regular operations, pointing out that more than $4 billion has already been spent on their rehabilitation with limited visible results. Market players warn that failure to provide a definitive timeline undermines efforts to reduce Nigeria's heavy reliance on imported petroleum products, a situation that contributes to foreign exchange pressure, higher domestic fuel costs, and lost opportunities for direct and indirect job creation within the petroleum value chain. The federal government has raised alarm over the effects of rapid population growth and unplanned urban expansion on Nigeria's housing and construction sector, saying the twin trends are driving up building costs and straining existing infrastructure. The warning came on January 22nd as officials framed these dynamics as a key challenge to sustainable urban development across the country. According to government assessments, Nigeria's population growth and migration to cities are creating unprecedented pressure on urban land, roads, utilities, and housing supply, conditions that push construction expenses higher because the demand for scarce building materials and land far exceeds supply. Conditions that push construction expenses higher because the demand for scarce building materials and land far exceeds supply. This pattern, officials noted, also contributes to inflationary pressures on cement, iron rods, and other core construction inputs, making new projects more expensive for both developers and prospective homeowners. Authorities at the Federal Ministry of Housing and Urban Development have pointed to broader housing deficits nationwide that stem from the mismatch between rapidly growing demand and the pace on the pace of housing delivery. Urbanization rates in major cities such as Lagos, Abuja, and Port Harcourt have surged, driving intense competition for developed land and pushing prices higher. Government leaders are advocating for enhanced urban planning, land reform, and expanded infrastructure investment as tools to mitigate the cost escalation and meet housing needs. Proposed measures include encouraging public-private partnership, prioritizing local building material production, and modernizing land administration systems to improve access and affordability. And that's all we have on the news update on Papyrus Global TV. I am Christiana Babayo. Thanks for joining us.